Hello, good evening and welcome to the program. This is Daily Politics live on Trust TV, your go-to platform for everything politics, policy and governance. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Tonight on the program, we turn the spotlight on Nigeria's anti-corruption watchdog, the foremost anti-corruption party, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, which has dismissed 27 of its staff members over alleged fraudulent activities, including a $400,000 claim involving a sectional head. Founded during the Obasanjo administration to tackle corruption head-on, the EFCC has faced its fair share of controversies, particularly allegations of misconduct against its leadership, which have led to abrupt exits for almost all its past chairmen. While the agency has taken bold steps to clean house and reinforce its zero-tolerance stance on corruption, the latest dismissals raised critical questions about its recruitment process and the infiltration of quote-unquote bad eggs into its ranks. Joining us to dissect these developments are two leading voices from the civil society industry or sector. Salaudeen Hashim is Program Director at CLEEN Foundation and Muktar Modibbo is the head of Follow the Money at Connected Development. Gentlemen, good evening to you both and thank you so much for joining me on the program tonight. It's good to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
Happy New Year, I believe, is in order. This is the first appearance on the program. Hashim Salaudeen will be joining us virtually on the program via Zoom for this conversation. But let's start the conversation here in the studio. First of all, it sounds like a broken record now. Corruption at EFCC. They almost go hand in hand, which is quite ironic, isn't it? Because it is the agency that is supposed to uphold the law and fight this evil that has undermined Nigeria's growth and development, which is corruption. Give me a sense of how to contextualize this argument, knowing the history of EFCC itself, more than 2 decades in existence now.
All right. So, Abdullah, if you look at what we're dealing with is, there have been a lot of conversation around if you're fighting corruption, corruption will definitely fight you. And we've been having conversations around what are the things that are the problems of EFCC. One, there have been that conversation of lack of that inflow of political interference, that inflow of the issue of recruitment. Now, what are the prerequisites of who should be a staff of EFCC, right? We have to look at integrity. We have to look at him having a passion of whether or not of governance and accountability, transparency and accountability. We have to look at that perseverance of conversation around governance and accountability. And then we have to look at the major thing, the issue of integrity. So are these things we do consider? I want to dissect a little bit. You could look at what is happening on social media a lot of times. You see legislators coming to say one of their achievements is I've gotten so person from my constituents, I've gotten so person a number of so jobs, appointment and what have you. The conversation is, are the requirements of who should be at EFCC or something really judiciously being followed, right? Are these people, does these people portray some level of understanding of law, governance, accounting, maybe some level of skills around investigations and what have you? So that's the main issue. If you look at EFCC as a commission, right, over time you could see that most of the chairmen of EFCC, I don't think there is any of the chairmen that left without anything, including the person that is the chairman now, was suspended as the secretary of the commission. The investigation was done. The investigation, the report of the investigation is not yet out. He was appointed. And we've raised some level of complaints around, can we know what was found against him? Or if he is a good man, the investigation happens to be a normal thing, it was not found with anything, let the public know. Because for EFCC to be effective, there must be that trust and belief from the people, right? And we've been having this kind of issue. Today, when I was called upon for this conversation, one of the things I tried to put on my notes that I'll just put is, I was just looking at what is the public and political, public perception of EFCC. I was looking at what is the corruption index within the EFCC. I was looking at insufficient collaboration with other agencies. Now, I'll give you an example on that very conversation. We've got the ICPC, we've got the Code of Conduct, we've got the NFIU, we've got the EFCC, the Ministry of Justice, and what have you. What is the level of collaboration between these agencies to fight corruption, right? That is another issue. And then I tried to put these issues of powerful elites. You know, I don't know what that means to you, but powerful elite, to some extent, you cannot see anybody being prosecuted largely in the EFCC, apart from now that we're seeing the Yaya Bello.
You're saying there are sacred cows or the quote-unquote untouchables.
I mean, there is something like that. And another thing to add into the conversation after Yaya Bello is being prosecuted by EFCC is the issue of the judicial bottleneck. So, Abdullah, for us to effectively have an EFCC that will work, we have to address the issue of political interference, we have to address the issue of judicial bottleneck, we have to address the issue of that political elite, because it has happened in the case of Danjuma Goje, you know, when he left the ruling party to another party, there was some conversation, and when he returned, all the conversation died down. I don't know if they are continuing with the conversation and what have you. And then another thing, for the people that were sacked, you know, there are a lot of things to be considered before you can be a staff of that. And I think one thing that EFCC should really critically look at is not just because you need a job, but do you have passion for transparency and accountability, right? Do you have passion for system of governance? Do you have, you know, skills around maybe auditing, investigation skills? Do you know something around fraud? Do you know a little bit about, let them, what I'm trying to say is, let the people that are going to be employed be getting in some level of percentage optimally. Let their optimal institutional performance be built, not that they are at zero level of conversation and then they get them, they put them up. But if they are at one certain level, you know, the EFCC can build their capacity to suit in their job. Considering
the special area that EFCC is dealing with, which is corruption, and how we know, for instance, the criminal underworld is highly sophisticated. They probably have more resources at their disposal to cover up their criminal acts, whether it's money laundering, internet fraud, or you know, embezzlement of public funds, and so on and so forth. Probably they have a lot more resources at their disposal than the EFCC has. Do you think, as an institution, it was established with the proper guardrails that would allow it to function in an optimal way? A lot of people seem to think that EFCC from the get-go was meant to serve as a political tool in this country, and that is why we cannot expect it to perform in such a way that would actually indicate that we're fighting corruption optimally in this country.
So Abdullah, for me, I would not say I agree with that, right? The conversation is, if EFCC is being created out of a point because there have been a lot of incidents of corruption in Nigeria, just so you know, the first anti-corruption agency we've had is Code of Conduct, before we move to ICPC, before we move to the EFCC and what have you. And if you look at the cases the EFCC handled during the watch of the present National Security Advisor, you could say that it has been a good, it has a good start, right? But the conversation of where people are taking it from, you could look at it as, okay, the EFCC were created out of police, and then there have not been any standardization, and over time they got this standardization, and now they're getting the process. The reality is, even if they're bettered out of something, but the will of them tackling corruption, and the main conversation now is how independent are the EFCC. Now, what is the level of interference of people in government, the political interference, and what have you? These are the old conversation. But the question we need to also ask is, why are all the EFCC chairmen going under, is either suspension, is either someone, Nuribado left, he went on an exile, we've got the late Ibrahim Lamurde, Farida Waziri, Magu of recent, Abrashid of the recent Abrashid Bawa, and now we have the newest one. We don't know what will happen to him. But the main conversation is, I think the main thing is...
what do you think this pattern is predicated on? I mean, this unceremonious dismissal or removal from office of the top-ranking people calling the shots. What do you think? Because I mean, it happens more than once, more than 3 times, more than 4 times. Then you begin to see a pattern.
Yeah.
What do you think is going on here? Are the people leading the agency inherently corrupted by the system, or what do you think is going on? What's your theory?
So from my own theory is the system lack independence, the system lack sustainability, and the system lack continuity. And if we don't have this, the system will not show result. Because yes, you could say that if you compare the number of cases the EFCC is pursuing and the number of cases they have gotten ruling on, and it's a they will say they have, let me say in a layman's term, they have won the case or won the case. You could see that the balance is something else. I mean, you could see that EFCC is running a case for 7, 8, 9 years. And that's why I mentioned the issue of the judicial bottleneck, right? The issue of political interference. And then the issue of that, in youth engagement, we always talk about godfatherism. In this part of system, we talk about political elite, So who are the people that are influencing what? And why are EFCC chairmen going on ceremonially? That is to tell you the interference is happening. And the major thing, again, after interference is the corruption in the EFCC. And we're seeing it from the people that are being sacked.
All right. Let's bring in Hashim Salaudeen into the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Let's get your initial thoughts about this one. 27 personnel of the EFCC already sacked, 10 under investigation for quote-unquote irregular and criminal activity, where they supposedly broke into an evidence room, carted away some hard currencies, including some gold items, and so on and so forth. He who comes to equity must come with clean hands. But it does appear that even our foremost anti-corruption agency is not clean at all. What do you make of it?
Thank you very much, Abdullahi. I think it would be nice to begin by saying that accountability is the political health of any modern state. And unfortunately, what we have seen with the recent challenge that is currently confronting the anti-corruption Caesar is the fact that there is a huge deficit in our anti-corruption campaign. And that is because anti-corruption in this country is more of a slogan than you see it as a program of action. And just to add to the voice of the colleague inside the studio, speaking to the concerns that bordered around the trajectory of the unceremonious exits of most of the anti-corruption EFCC chairmen. It is actually because of the deficit in the proceed of crime management system and the portfolio that we have. The system is inherently built on a system that should actually, that cannot withstand the pressure that comes from some of these situations. And that in itself also implicates those guys who are in there, because they know too well that the database, the data management, and of course the records that borders around the entire management of proceeds are not thoroughly kept, and they are able to verify that. And because they are insiders, it was easy for them to be able to want to break through. And that, for me, is something that we need to deal with. 2 is the issue that borders around recruitment process of personnel within the EFCC. And of course, you agree with me that recruitment hadn't been on merit in a long while, perhaps since the inception of this organization. It has always been by purpose of referrals. And we know too well that only these creme de la creme in the society that have always had their wards or their proxies being recommended to be recruited by the agency. So if you don't have a transparent system of recruitment, opportunities are there that you are already having a cankerworm that is already waiting for you to be dealt with. And perhaps again, at this point, is the fact that the entire legal framework and the anti-corruption system that we have is actually very faulty. Recently, the ICPC had just released a report, and that report they released is actually supposed to be an index on integrity index of most of the institutions. And there were about 18 institutions that actually came with deficit. As a matter of fact, I think we discussed this on this. It came 0, 18 different, and with the judiciary actually topping the list in that particular chart. And that tells very clearly that we need to have an entire holistic system. I had expected the ICPC report to be translated into a query, and then of course some agencies should actually be responding to that rather than being celebrated. But again, those who are custodian of the law are those who are highly implicated in this whole situation. Coming back to the issue that borders around the EFCC, I think there is a major issue that is very fundamental. Every administration in this country has become more corrupt than either their predecessor or even their successor. And this is because there is no deliberate effort in combating this. Remember, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala had said in our book that, look, corruption in itself fights back in a country where you have everybody who is endemic. And I think it is very important for us to have framework and institution that is quite compliant and sensitive to the entire matrix that will help us to keep an accountability matrix. Otherwise, we'll continue to be confronted with situations like this.
The Kaide Olukoyede-led EFCC says this purge, this house cleaning, is part of its efforts to ensure that only the best people with integrity operate within the agency as EFCC agents, officials, and generally personnel. Does that inspire any sort of confidence in you that this is the beginning of something that could course correct the mandate of the EFCC?
To be very honest, I think this is a very courageous step that the EFCC chairman had taken, and we commend him very strongly for even having the courage to come out and do this house cleaning, because of course he knows too well that for him to be able to confront this menace constructively. And to be very honest with you, the reason why this is very important is that you will realize that serially EFCC had lost high-profile cases, particularly for those involving politically exposed persons. And the reason is simple. There are a lot of mole inside who are helping to ensure that the entire prosecution process do not actually see the light of the day, or they are providing technical insights into how to manage this situation. Recall the recent former Kogi State governor when he was being taken to the custody. The guy was smiling and throwing waves at everybody as though he was going into a political rally. And that for me was an insult on the entire prosecution team to have seen an individual who didn't see a watertight process. So the investigators and the prosecutors in the EFCC also require an evaluation now. He needs to evaluate them and ask critical questions. And one of the instances and questions that came also was that there were also some members of the team who also put a call across to the former NPA chairman and were demanding for $1 million. And of course, purportedly that this request was coming from the EFCC chair. And I think that issue also boomeranged and also had added to the inventory of the reason why this house cleaning is happening. And I can guarantee you that this is not just happening, this had happened over time. And I can tell you that it is one of the major contributor factor to why former chairman had left unceremoniously. I think this step is actually very welcome. It is actually very strategic for us to have an agency that can help to actually lead this crusade to the point where individuals, at the mention of EFCC, that some people will quake. Some years ago, when Nuhu Ribadu was there, the fear of EFCC is the beginning of wisdom. But today, the mention of EFCC, people will just smile at you and as though it is just a regular agency and nobody is afraid of it. We have seen a case where a former governor, after his tenure, because of the threat, wore a T-shirt with a campaign, EFCC, I am here. That tells you that the agency agency has become so ridiculed and have become something that nobody gives that respect anymore. Perhaps now, with this strategic move, we may be seeing a return of that agency that we all revert at some point in our national history.
Right. Let's segue back into the studio here with Muktar. Muktar, do you think, to piggyback off of what Mr. Salaudeen was saying about the fear factor, right? It's like marking Lionel Messi in his prime. You don't want to do that. But when he's much older, dribbles less, of course, you can take him on. Do you think the EFCC has lost its fear factor because it doesn't have the bite anymore? It can back, but it can't bite anymore, and that's why we're seeing from even within its own agency.
The truth is, I agree completely with what he said, and that's what I was trying to pinpoint earlier, the issue of that integrity and strong ethics. When No Ribado was at EFCC, I'm not saying only No Ribado. When EFCC started, let me use that word, there have been that conversation of fear, that particular fear of, oh, I will not want to have any case that has to do with EFCC. So for me, what I'm thinking is anti-corruption agency should be an agency that you are afraid of being there. You
think the fear factor is important?
It's very, very important, because the conversation of, a lot of times when it comes to fighting corruption, what I want to see now is how prepared are we to avert it from happening, not that come and stop it from happening. Can we avert it from happening from the first instance? So if the people in power are afraid of the system, now I'll tell you, the only people that are afraid of is the people they call Yahoo boys, because the EFCC is really clamping down on them. And you could see the fear. It has sort of reduced the number of things. The last time I was here, we were discussing about the biggest raid they've had, So if the fear is not there, I'll cite an example with what Hashim said with the Fayose, what's his name? The former Ekiti State governor. When he came out to say, EFCC, I'm here, and nothing happens. Did you see anything happens? Nothing. I mean, the Dino Malaya case, it happens. I mean, they all went sick and
is there
all
also
of a sudden
a chance that, Muktar, a lot of Nigerians presume guilt when EFCC is investigating someone, and when the agency's prosecution doesn't amount to a successful prosecution or a verdict in their favor, people assume that something has been compromised? Is there also a chance that the mentality of the public is skewed in such a way that EFCC can only win if they keep sending people to jail?
So for me, Abdullah, the main conversation of that is not for people to go to jail, but for people not to put in themselves into corruption issues. I'll give you an example. High-profile cases. We've seen the Accountant General of the Federation, the guy from Kano, right? Tell me, where is the case? What is happening? I will remind you, if you have forgotten, the issue of Farouk Lawal. He was in jail for how many years? Farouk Lawal is out. I mean, he has missed a lot of things. He's trying to catch up. People close to him, even if that has not taught them a lesson, they could know that, oh, okay, a system is there. A system has happened to this very person. So what we're saying is, let's see these high-profile cases, right? Let's see them go in a way they are meant to go. It's not the only issue of EFCC, and that's why earlier I mentioned the issue of the judicial bottleneck. So we need a revamp in the entire system so that we'll be able to see that, you see, aside ethics and what have you, the level of confidentiality and loyalty is also required. If you are a staff of Trust TV, if something is happening within Trust TV that is bad, I'm not saying something is happening that is bad, but you will not want to be the one that will leak it out, right? And there have been a lot of issues of people, having to hear some things out there or what have you. So what I would say is, for now, as someone that believes in a process, believe in systems, it's a good thing that the EFCC is cleaning its own house, right? It's cleaning in its own house so that it can face the public. But what the EFCC needs to do is clean. After cleaning, begin to install trust among the citizen. Because if the citizen don't trust, no believe what the EFCC is doing, I don't think I mean, they will do something really good.
So in talking about how the odds are stacked against the EFCC, right? They don't get credit even when some of these high-profile cases get favorably prosecuted and so on and so forth. And there are quite a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes that we might not be privy to. But give me your understanding of what it would take to turn things around, especially when it comes to public perception, because it does matter even to the EFCC for Nigerians to believe that they are fighting the good fight and not just be seen to be saying it, but to be seen to be doing it. What do they need to do? Do you think sacking 27 personnel and putting 10 on suspension pending an investigation is a big enough statement to say to Nigerians, we're cleaning house and we're trying to make things right?
So Abdullah, it's not about cleaning the house. And I'll give you an example. I don't want to go back to 2023. Starting from 2024, we've had the two former ministers of humanitarian being investigated. Till today, the minister has been replaced, So what happened? Is it that she was found guilty? What happened? The minister is out there. She's online. She's on Twitter, speaking as a normal person. Investigation has happened. What really happened? We've not seen anything. Would you believe them if they said they are going to investigate tomorrow? No. Hadiza is also there. I mean, I watched her video today. Is it Hadiza or Sadia? Sadia. She was the former minister as well. What happened just last year? It just happened 2024.
Is it possible that they were not found guilty?
So if they were not found guilty, why wouldn't you say it?
I mean, isn't it evidence since they are walking free that maybe they are innocent?
That is not evidence. If you see me coming into Trust TV, the first thing I will tell the guys at security gate is, I am going to be on politics today. And what is your name? And I'll tell them my name. They will check and then let me in. If I'm going out, thank you. The person has gone out. So the reality is they have been to the EFCC for investigation and what have you. The people are aware that this very person, the Beta Edu, was suspended and nothing happened again. So the reality is not just about cleaning. Cleaning is the biggest thing because, like you said, he who seek equity must do equity. If you're coming to equity, you must come with clean hands, right? So the reality is they are doing well by cleaning the house, but I don't think how many staffs does EFCC have? 27. Are they the only people? Are they the scapegoats? We don't know. If 27 has been sacked, 10 were put on suspension. If the investigation is being conducted and everything, will those people, really, will we see changes? Because if we don't see changes, then the 27 are just lost their job because, nothing happened.
Yeah, scapegoats has been the word that has been used multiple times. But Mr. Salaudeen, bring you back into the conversation and to double down on what Muktar was just saying right now about how some of these high-profile cases have been silenced, so to say, without the public necessarily getting a full detail of an acquittal, for instance, if they were prosecuted to a court. And that leaves much to be desired because then people are allowed to imagine what happened, right? And imaginations can run wild. Talk to me about what one particular element has done to the conversation around fighting corruption in this country, the plea bargain option, where people who are caught with their hands in the pot are allowed to maybe leave like 3, 4, 5 pieces of meat inside the pot and maybe take one. And that's the end of the story. And for some people in civil society, anti-corruption campaigners, they say that type of a slap on the wrist can only embolden more people to take down that route because they have a get out of jail card ready-made. What do you make of the plea bargain option that appears to be there in principle? Because that's what we're hearing. Some of these high-profile cases, you see them appear in court once or twice, and then that's the end of the story. They are normal citizens again.
Muktar made a very excellent thought when he mentioned some recent cases. And of course, just to add to that profile is the Hadi Sirika situation and some of the mega revelations that we have seen very lately. But to answer your question directly, there were clear infraction of the Fiscal Responsibility Act that says very clearly that, look, monies meant for purposes of official duties cannot or should not in any case be paid into a private account. And that happened. There were evidence that suggests that that clearly happened. But again, just like he mentioned, what happened? Nothing. Strategic communication or transparent communication in this effort is actually very fundamental, because what it does is that it builds confidence of citizens, and it allows for the public to also know very well that you have actually debriefed on a particular subject matter. Remember that very shortly, maybe in about 2-3 months from now, that Transparency International will release their index again, and it's a perception index, and it will tell you very clearly that with all of these cases that Nigeria would do worse. And then of course, the moment it happens, we begin to ask ourselves, with all of the political hype and all of the what exactly has happened, I can guarantee you that it is actually going to dwarf our rating going forward. And that is on that. And directly on your conversation about the issue of how all of these things comes as to regarding the issue that borders around plea bargaining. It was a political ambush that we did not see coming. The political class and the elites, there is an elite capture of the society. And they knew that a moment and a time will come, and they decided to provide a proviso that will also provide them with a cover in the event that they were caught in the hand in the pot, just like you have mentioned. Then they can quickly say, look, we have it written somewhere that you can actually have a conversation and bring back something. We didn't see that coming. In a civilized climate, the issue of plea bargaining is actually meant to be able to ensure that we recover. Asset recovery becomes very strategic as an agenda of the state, which Nigeria is actually a signatory to with the anti-corruption protocols that we also have signed off since 2016. But unfortunately, what we have seen is that government is actually not deliberately committed to some of those index. We have some of the dashboard that the Accountant General of the Federation had developed. We have some of the infrastructure that should help us to deepen accountability that government agencies themselves have actually refrained themselves from committing to. And one of the things that I also need to let you know is that the idea of ICPC and EFCC had actually also been defeated. ICPC was meant to deal with the preventive component and provide every form of plug to the leakages and wastages, and developed integrity index that will allow for the system to be strengthened. And that also is supposed to be a warning to say, look, we have noticed some weak areas. You need to also develop and strengthen them so that EFCC will not be able to sweep in on you. But the report is clear, and it came out to say all of these agencies are actually culpable, and these are the areas where we have found them to be wanting, but yet EFCC hadn't done that. And just like the colleague in the studio had mentioned, there are quite a lot of high-profile cases, and once we have some media trials, despite the overwhelming evidence that we have out there, what we see at the end of the day is actually a relapse of the system, and what therefore continues to grow is the resentment among the people and the perception that, look, there is some level of political compromise that may have happened. Because even if you are going to do or activate plea bargaining, it has a procedure. There is a process that you must activate to be able to actualize it. It is not something you close indoors and conclude it, and then of course you leave the public in the limbo. No, you have to actually transparently communicate the outcome. And that is why the issue of opening a register that will also allow for people who have gone through this process to also be documented, even if at the end of the day, they are not either going to face the wrath of the law or they are not going to be in prison, like you have said, that particular register is open where naming and shaming can therefore happen. Now, the implication with this is that these people can therefore not have access to political or public office going forward into the future. INEC in the future, or political party in the future, can make references to those register and say, look, this person has a baggage. Because of these baggages, it therefore means that it becomes a political liability. If we therefore field this person as a political candidate that will allow us not to be able to make some progress. These are the infrastructure that the plea bargaining are meant to achieve. It is not meant to be a coffee talk shop where people speak inside a room and then, of course, bring back some gold and some USD and lock them up in a room. And some individuals will now know that we don't have a proper crime or data management system or a process of crime management server. And therefore, they try to break in just to be able to cut away this. It is an embarrassment on the system. And what this does is that the public, therefore, begin to develop this kind of feeling that if the fellow that you have actually put in charge of guarding your house has therefore become the robber himself, how then do you want to manage it? But the confidence and the trust we have now is that the current EFCC chairman has taken this commitment forward and has decided to be very frontal and decided to ensure that he's using both jig and bleach and all the necessary detergents to actually wash the entire system. It is a thorough cleaning. Because one of the things that I also want to recommend to him is that he needs to also do an evaluation of his prosecutors and his investigators, because that is the point where we lack and lost the ingredients for a proper prosecution processes. Because if we don't have a proper adjudication process, because look, the court is actually established on prima facie. You need to be able to substantiate evidence. So if the fellow who is supposed to be representing the state is actually not coming forward with something that is substantial or something that gives an ingredient that a crime has been committed, the judge will be left with no choice than to actually strike out that case at some point. So it is actually twisting the law when you don't have a proper prosecutor or investigation system that will help you to deal with this. And I think that is the step we should take next.
Right. And in talking about the internal conflict that EFCC is dealing with, Muktar, about personnel who are either compromised or are quote-unquote bad eggs. There are some who are not comfortable that EFCC has monopoly or some kind of monopoly over policing itself, that there needs to be somebody else watching the watchdog. What do you think about that as a panacea to addressing the concerns that we have about personnel of EFCC who think, listen, it doesn't go anywhere above EFCC. We are the last bus stop when it comes to fight against corruption. So we can afford to perhaps dip our hands in the kitty and get away with it. Do you think the EFCC itself needs to be policed in such a way that it doesn't, the agency doesn't have total control over, say for instance, punishing erring personnel?
So the reality is it's a two-way thing, right? For you to be able to fix something, you have to be clean before you can fix it. So I think for personnel, EFCC should not wait to clean, but before employment, before bringing in people to the house so that other people cannot corrupt other people. Because, you know, while growing up, it is a normal thing that they will say, oh, don't follow this person will corrupt you. Because for me, as a grown-up person now, I've realized that if you don't want to be corrupted, I don't think you can be. So before bringing in these people, they need to clean them up.
You're talking about recruitment?
Recruitment need to be addressed. The issue of their recruitment need to be addressed. And who can address the issue of their recruitment is the EFCC itself, the people that are recruited.
But haven't we also established, Muktar, in this conversation, that the undue political influence is the reason why EFCC is in the kind of mess it is in right now, why its capacity has been greatly diminished, so to say, because of the overbearing political interference. So how can EFCC achieve that if they get a call from the National Assembly or from the presidency with a certain list of people as new recruits? How can the agency say no?
So I think the first thing before the recruitment is, you know, whatever interference you are getting is if you want to get that kind of interference. Hey, if you're giving me the job to be the chair of EFCC, I have my own prerequisite. Any job interview I've done is immediately after the job interview, I'll have to say, hey, I have a question, right? Would I be allowed to do this and this and this and this and this at my own purview, all right? If no, then you drop it. You get, because see, our main perception is why people begin to trust some put some trust to some extent on the EFCC is when the EFCC chairman has been granting a lot of interviews, to the extent there was a point where during the Yaya Bello case, he came out to say, oh, okay, he has paid some level of resources to a particular school here in Abuja for someone that is not even in school. And you could see the outcry from the public, you know, oh, this is a good thing, this man is saying it out. You know, if you look at what we're doing today, we're commending him for cleaning up the system. So if the public are aware, right, see the cases that are happening. You could see the very dark man guy that has been going out. He's not EFCC, but I mean, he has been helping people to collect their money. What is he doing? He's just using the public as an institution. If I am a political figure, maybe a National Assembly member, decide to send you a list, put it in the public domain. Before you can be able to be the chairman, you should have that level of communication skills, right? That communication skills is that skills that will enable you to carry everybody along. So if you're able to put it out there that, oh, the chairman wants us, this National Assembly person wants us to put this and this and this and this, tomorrow nobody will do that.
So you expect the EFCC chairman to make enemies of people who have...
Appoint him.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you appoint
you do know that they also have the powers to remove him.
Yeah, if they remove him, the
president and the National Assembly.
Yeah, if they remove him, that shows that he is doing something. Why was he removed? Then we should get, the public should, I mean, he is a public servant. The public should get a full details of why he is being removed.
So do you think, like the Nigerian problem, where people put their trust in one man to fix the system, do you think Kayode Olukoyede will have the capacity or has the capacity
it's not about
to fix the problem?
No, nobody trusts only him. But as a figurehead, he can make that thing work, right? So what we're saying is it's a process. He is there. If you want change to happen, change will happen. If you don't want change to happen, change will not happen. Today, I will tell you, I mean, as a grown-up married man, if I'm going back to my father's house, once it's 10, I know I will not approach the house because that is his policy, that is his law. So if you want to relax that today, it will be relaxed. You get, but that is the policy he put for himself. So if the EFCC chairman want change to happen, if the president has given him all power and the president decide to say, oh, I will not interfere with anything, I will tell you, we've heard the stories of what happened between the then President Olusegun Obasanjo and the then Minister of the FCT, that is in person of Malam El-Rufai, to say, oh, go and do what is right, leave the political conversation to me, right? So it's all about independency. Once if this agency have the level of independency that it's required, and the person that is in as the chairman is being deliberate and systematic, I promise you it will work.
So Salaudeen, talking about institutionalizing some sort of stopgap or guardrails to stop personnel from taking advantage of the system because they have, you know, knowledge about certain investigations that they can easily milk or things like that. How do we do it beyond just having faith in the EFCC chairman's, you know, commitment and dedication to the job so that it can, you know, become part of the institutional memory? I mean, we were talking just moments ago, we were talking about the glory days of the Nuhu Ribadu era in the EFCC, and they seem like ages ago. If Kayode Olukoyede is trying to rebuild that trust, is trying to regain that reputation, that fear factor of the EFCC, and is starting from home, how do you institutionalize that so that it can live beyond a certain EFCC chairman?
Kayode is actually a moral man, and I believe very strongly that he's going to actually bring back the old EFCC that we all know. And having said that, to institutionalize this, there is something in the security parlance that is called vetting. Vetting is actually a process that allows you to covertly or overtly check and do some background review of your personnel that are actually coming into the system. And that in itself tells you very clearly whether or not you do some kind of character check, do some kind of previous antecedents, and how well they have been able to be perceived wherever they have worked, and therefore you can make them conducive, whether or not they can actually connect with the kind of effort and work they want to bring into the system. That is very fundamental. And I think EFCC should take the issue of vetting very seriously, because what they are doing is quite fundamental and is quite strategic. Two is the fact that they must also learn the art of ensuring an integrity process that is developed with indicators that must actually be met by whoever that is actually coming into the system. Muktar had mentioned political influence is actually very key. But once you have political influence, subject it to some kind of merit. And if merit actually throws them up for purposes of recruitment, fine. But if not, don't allow political influence to actually get it into the system. So once you put vetting and you put a process that allows for a tedious and rigorous recruitment, I tell you that it is going to be very difficult for political interference to cow the chairman or the system into that kind of system. The third one is intelligence. We must develop some kind of financial intelligence that allows for systematic, either putting a fingerprint on proceed of crime or allowing some level of effort to actually go into this particular system. And why do I need financial intelligence? Since 9/11, one of the global efforts had been to track any financial movement, because they know too well that for you to actually upset a system, you can either be a public officer or you be a criminal. And those resources that are coming in, either from public or from private hands, can actually help to destabilize a system. And one thing we have not done is that our financial intelligence unit have not been robust enough to actually work strongly with the EFCC, or that EFCC internally needs to develop a very strong monitoring unit that will also engage constructively. I know that they have this special control unit on money laundering, and I've engaged with the director, very vast, very intelligent person. But one of the things that I believe should be done is that there must be a nexus internally that coordinates the kind of efforts they are putting together and allow them to project and engage in a very constructive manner with the support of the private sector, which is actually the bank. The bankers committee have a very huge role to play in this particular value chain. But what we have seen is that we are seeing an isolation in terms of how things actually work. Either the banks, and this is actually without prejudice, are actually working because it is profit-led, and they are not cooperating or providing the kind of support that the anti-corruption agencies require to be able to engage constructively. And I think it is very important for this kind of coordination and collaboration to happen, to be able to engage in a more constructive way. And finally, the fact that the chairman now, as very moral and upright as he is, has an opportunity with the current NSA chairman, who is also known to be very result-oriented and result-driven. There is a need to key in on the Office of the National Security Advisor, build a very strong collaboration with that office, and that in itself can provide a leverage that can help him to engage in a more constructive manner. And I think if you put all of this infrastructure together, opportunities are there that in 1 year, we can restore the integrity and a very positive trajectory of EFCC in the minds of the people and in the eyes of international organizations. Because I tell you, it's actually a mockery within the Committee of Nations when you begin to hear this kind of news out there. But the only respite we have now is that we have confidence in the chair, and we know that he is able to rescue the situation. But it is unfortunate, and I can tell you one thing for free, that what those guys attempted to do, or those ones who were calling to ask for money were doing, was because it has happened before, and those who did it went away with it. And that is the reason why these guys are also trying to try their luck and see if it goes. Unfortunately, luck ran out of them. What we need to do is to have a system that is holistic in the management of proceeds of crime, have a database, have a management system, and a portfolio that can help you to work better. Is
this move enough? It looks like a slap on the wrist, to be honest. If if people take advantage of the system, partake in a criminal activity, despite all the public trust that has been reposed in them, do you think losing their job is a big enough statement to say EFCC is against corruption, especially when it comes to its staff? Do you think losing their job is enough?
So I think it's just what is out there is just the issue of the losing their job. But I don't think that's enough. I mean, if the disciplinary committee have found them with some level of things and then that led to them being sacked, then they should be prosecuted. That's what I feel, right? But if the disciplinary committee that sort of have the technical know-how of the magnitude of what they have done decided to say, oh, okay, let's just let them go, then, I mean, they have every right to do that. But I think if what they have done is really to that extent of letting them go, then the EFCC should prosecute them.
If it doesn't end up in a prosecution, it's a half measure.
It's a half measure, actually. If you ask me, it's a half measure because tomorrow they will be employed in another agency that will cause more harm to the country than good.
Muktar, as always, a pleasure having you join us on the program. Thank you very much for the analysis. Appreciate you for stopping by. Mr. Salaudeen, thank you so much for your analysis as well. We do appreciate you for joining the conversation, and we do hope to speak to both of you soon. And of course, as always, thank you so much for your time and company. Daily Politics returns tomorrow live at 8 p.m, exclusive as always on Trust TV. Until next time, my name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Good evening.